everybody. Welcome to our very first virtual author event. I was so happy to see so many of you interested to join in, hear more about the story, about some of my experiences, and really just how special Bancroft is. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Toni Pergolin. I'm the president and CEO of Bancroft, and I'm the author of Too Important to Fail: Leadership Lessons for Nonprofits. I'd also like to introduce Diane Higgins, who's with me today. Wave, Diane.
Hello.
Hello, Diane is a good friend, and she's a family member, and she'll be joining me later in the event to share her story about Timmy. So we'll see you in a little bit, Diane.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to start just by telling you a little bit about the format of the event today. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself and how I arrived at Bancroft. And then I'm going to read some excerpts from the book, and I'm going to share some thoughts, like things I was thinking about at the time that this was all happening. And then I'm going to invite Diane back. She'll read her story as well. And then we should certainly have some time at the end for a few questions. So speaking of questions, I want to call your attention. You should all see a little toolbar on your screen, and it controls the audio if you need to adjust it, and also allows you to ask a question. So again, certainly feel free to ask questions, and we'll get to them at the end. So I'm going to get started, and just by telling you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was the only girl of 4 children, and all 3 of my brothers still live in Pittsburgh. And so I get back quite a lot. And if you've never been, I'd highly recommend it. It's a great little city. Both my parents, you're looking at my mom now, both my parents were accountants, and that might explain why I am one too. My mom, special lady, and certainly my role model in so many ways. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize it. She worked for a big accounting firm back in the day when most moms didn't work. She worked in a male-dominated field. And as much as she talked about work, never once did I hear her say she wasn't treated fairly or she was treated any differently. And that really carried through with me. You know, it was like when I started in a male-dominated field, I didn't think twice about being treated differently or unfairly. And I have to say, I never felt that I was. She also taught me that you can both be an executive at a company and raise a family. She made sure there was dinner on the table every night for all 6 of us, whether it was a crazy busy day or not. And again, I think I carried that with me because I did the same for my 2 boys. I really didn't know any different. I went to Penn State, and after I graduated, I moved to Philly with a lot of my college friends. My career started in banking, but not for long. I soon found a position in a non-for-profit health organization, which I really enjoyed from the very beginning. I grew my career at the Penn Health System for 15 years, and I had a great opportunity. I was able to advance and expand my scope every few years. I had a lot of great mentors, and then I got to a point where I just knew it was time to leave. And I really wanted to find a place that I could take all that I learned and bring it to an organization that could really benefit from it. So I was beyond thrilled when I got the offer to be the Chief Financial Officer at Bancroft. And the CEO at the time was somebody who I had worked for at Penn. And he reached out to me and said, I want you to come help me with a few financial problems that the organization was having. So I was, again, very, very excited and came without hesitation. And I have to say, I knew nothing about Bancroft before I arrived. I didn't know that there were organizations like this. I didn't really know what they did. And for sure, I didn't know just how many families and people needed their services. A few things struck me right off the bat. Staff. So I remember coming here and just being amazed at the staff who had been here for so long in really jobs that were hard to do. And I could see early on that they were really committed to what they were doing, not necessarily just a job that they went home at the end of the day and never thought again about it. They were committed, they were dedicated, and you could tell they wanted to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. It was really palpable. The other thing I learned early on was just how special the individuals we serve are. And although I worked in nonprofit for 15 years prior, never had I worked for an organization where the mission was just such a huge part and like front and center of everything the organization did. It was amazing that they worked among us, and I really saw that staff helped them to be a part of the everyday world. It was truly our mission, and you saw it being played out every day. I saw that nobody was trying to cure these individuals, and instead accept them for who they were and help them enjoy life the best that they can. It was really, really powerful. And then the families like Diane. They're such a huge part of the organization, not just their group home or not just for the staff that work with their individuals, truly members of the organization, supportive, involved, part of our larger family. So the experience overall when I came was very warm and welcoming. Well, everything except the financials. They were not so warm. They were not so welcoming. And that's a nice segue to my first excerpt that will help set the stage for you. So let me read you here. Before I walked into the office that first day, I thought my approach to saving Bancroft would be simple and direct. Assess, prioritize, execute. That same approach worked for me when I was part of a team that turned a $30 million loss into a $6 million profit in just 3 years. To apply that proven approach, I just needed to know the extent of the problem. I'll come up with a plan and then I'll run it. Easy as putting my shoes on in the morning, as it was something I knew how to do until I began to grasp the full extent of the problem. And so I'm often asked, did I know the financial situation before I arrived? And the answer is yes, I did. But I really wasn't nervous about it because I had done this a few times at Penn. And there was a playbook. I knew how to do a turnaround. But what I learned when I got here is you really never know the real state of the financial of an organization until you actually sit in the seat and have to live with it day to day. And what I learned pretty quickly is it was much worse off than I thought. I soon learned that the year before I arrived had been one of the greatest turmoil at Bancroft. The organization posted a $1 million loss at the end of the fiscal year 2003, which ended that June. That, coupled with a negative cash position in the multi-millions of dollars, signaled a crisis. A nonprofit can sustain a loss in any given year, but only if it has funds in reserve or an endowment to back it up. Bancroft did not have either. So those first few days, weeks, and months, it felt like I was fighting a fire with a small little garden hose. And I was really beginning to think early on that I was in over my head, but I just kept moving forward. And then after a few months, somebody came into my office and said, Toni, it's Bancroft Day this weekend. Now, I didn't really know what that meant. Of course, I've come to learn that it's an annual event where everybody who's a part of the Bancroft family goes to and is very excited about. And I thought, maybe I should go and I should learn a little bit more about this organization that I'm working at. So let me tell you about my very first Bancroft Day. On a glorious sunny fall afternoon, I sat in my car and I put my head on my steering wheel. I had just experienced my first Bancroft Day, an annual event held on the historic 122-year-old campus of Bancroft, Norrill, an organization that had been started in 1883 by a brave young school teacher who thought every child with special needs deserved a high-quality education. That day, I spoke to dozens of people, including some of the children and adults we served at the time, and many of their family members. Over and over again, I was told that they didn't know what they would do without a Bancroft. As I walked around meeting different people, I came to realize that I was one of the very few people who knew just how dire the situation was and that we were close to bankruptcy. I had to pretend, at least that day, that everything was all right. When I think back about it, I had to do a lot of pretending back in the day. I had to, show up with confidence and let everybody know that we would be able to get through this. And I think that's a strong leadership lesson. Great, if I came into work every day and said, oh my God, I don't think we're going to make it. I don't think we're going to make it. I'm not sure people would stick around for that. So being confident and really making sure you're putting on your good face for your employees is a really important skill set. I'd spent so much time locked in a battle with our finances that I hadn't really understood what would happen to the people we serve and their families. All those people that I met that day, if I couldn't turn things around, where would they go? What would they do? It was only then, in the parking lot on that beautiful day, that I came to understand what I was undertaking, and so much more than turning around a company or even preserving a legacy. It meant continuing to serve so we would not have to turn those wonderful, thankful people out in the cold. I just knew I had to do it, I thought as I turned on my car. Bancroft was too important to fail. Now, talking to families that day really impacted me. I just remember that hearing stories like I could have never even imagined. And to realize that so many people were really experiencing that. So this is a good time to bring Diane back. See if you can get back on the screen, Diane. There she is.
Here I am.
So Diane is somebody I got to know early on in my time at Bancroft. And she really, right off the bat, was kind, supportive. I remember you being creative. I remember you like knitting some creative thing that I knew I couldn't do. And I remember you being really committed, again, to the organization and not just, your, Timmy's staff. And you joined our family council. You helped with staff appreciation projects and all kinds of fundraisers. But the thing that you did the most that I think really I appreciated was talking to the new staff. Diane would talk to all of our new staff, and she would share some photos of Timmy that I think we're going to see here soon. But I really thought that was so important that staff hear from a mom that, just how much staff were, you were entrusting that staff to take care of your child. So thank you so much for sharing, allowing me to share your story, Diane. And, your story captured me in so many ways, and maybe because I too have a Timmy at home. But it really depicted a situation that I just couldn't imagine, because you described that, there was so much love and support in your family, and yet you had to deal with this really severe challenge of severe behaviors that was untenable. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the families that Bancroft serves were just like yours. So why don't you tell us your story?
Thank you, Toni. Yes, things were difficult with Tim. I often think we should have given him the middle name of Danger, since he just didn't seem to have any concept of it. He could scale heights to which I could only imagine. And on more than one occasion, I found him walking across our fireplace mantel or on the edge of a staircase. I was unbelievably frightened for my own child. Timmy was enrolled in a special education daycare program, but by the time he was 5, the school was having a hard time handling him. He was becoming more aggressive, and he was totally nonverbal. He would kick and bite staff members, all of whom fortunately wore protective gear. Timmy also had sensory issues with his feet, and when he was frustrated, he would kick off his shoes and throw them. Despite the drawbacks, we all believed it was best for Timmy to be at home with us, even as it became more increasingly difficult. He rarely slept at night, and he was awake by 4 a.m. every morning, and his energy never waned. I was exhausted all the time, and we rarely left our home. If we did go out, we always took 2 cars in case one of us had to leave in a hurry with Timmy. We kept him by our side and were so fearful that he would damage someone else's property. He was getting bigger and stronger, and he was becoming more aggressive. He would bite me or hit me or anyone else who happened to get in his way. The sound of breaking glass fascinated him. The glass panes on our French doors had to be replaced with plexiglass after Timmy punched his hand through them. One of his favorite things to do was pour waters on light bulb and watch them shatter. Timmy also liked to pick up pieces of glass to chew on because it reminded him of ice, which he did love to chew. His need to physically feel, the sensation of deep pressure would cause him to squeeze himself between cushions of our sofa, between a mattress and box spring, or even more concerning was to try to fit inside of our oven.
Oh, Diane, I have to stop you. I mean, that paragraph really, really it impacts me. I mean, I literally cannot even imagine that that was your everyday life. I mean, how did you survive that? To see your child really struggle through that must have been really hard.
It truly was. And we went through it one day at a time. He was our son. We loved him. But we finally grew to accept that Timmy was a danger to himself and to others, and we needed to find a safe environment for him. The first place we found was a 16-bed facility in another state, and it was very difficult for us to visit him. And after every visit, it was especially painful to leave him. I'll never forget his crying and his screaming each time we left. The program staff there conducted a full evaluation on Timmy, and it was determined that he exhibited over 1,000 maladaptive destructive behaviors each day. We found Bancroft in 2001 through one of Timmy's speech therapists. He was admitted to Bancroft's in the Linden's program, a neurobehavioral stabilization unit. During the 6 month he was in the program, the Bancroft staff worked tirelessly with him on weight management, which is an important factor in the autistic population. Weight gain is often associated with some of the medications prescribed to people with autism. But as Timmy's weight and eating habits changed, he began to lose weight and feel better, which contributed to a decrease in certain medications. The Bancroft team was able to refine Timmy's behavioral plan and focus on building his skills so that he could become more independent. Once his behavior stabilized, he eventually was able to move to a less restrictive environment, first to live in an apartment on campus, and then eventually into the community while he was attending the Bancroft School. When Timmy made the transition to a community-based group home, he progressed even further. He learned how to separate himself when he was in a situation that became too stressful for him. So he enjoyed coming home with us on weekends to spend time with us, but he always looked forward to returning to his Bancroft group home and was the first one out of the car to run up to the door. For the first time, we were looking forward to things in Timmy's future that looked like other kids his age, such as going to the prom or graduating from high school. These were milestones that we were never able to think about before. And we watched Timmy become increasingly more independent and able to care for many of his own personal needs. Our family was also now able to live a somewhat normal life, including getting a full night's sleep and just taking one car when we went to social events. Thank goodness there is Bancroft. I don't know where Timmy would be today if we had not found you.
I mean, Diane, it's still an amazing story as many times as I heard it. And, you know, you can tell it's just like the little things that people take for granted, like sleeping all night and taking one car some places. I mean, it just, And, you know, it must have been really wonderful for you and your family to watch Timmy progress
Absolutely.
as you said here. And I know that you credit it to the staff who really worked so hard with him to, you know, have him learn and grow like every other child. So
Yes.
tell me about Timmy today. I know he moved to a home closer to you over in Pennsylvania. How is he?
He is doing very well. He has taken this pandemic in his stride. And, you know, Tony, I've always regarded each one of my children as a gift. But Timmy just took a little bit longer to unwrap. And, you know, with Bancroft's help, we were able to peel back that wrapping a little bit at a time to see the true gift that Timmy is. So
That's
thank you
wonderful.
for all
And
that you've done, everyone.
tell us how old he is today.
Timmy is 29 years old, and
Oh
he
my
is
gosh.
very, very independent, very loving, and so enjoyable to be around. And I
And
couldn't
still,
always say that in the beginning years.
and he still likes going back to his group home. I mean, that's his like
Oh,
family and friends now, right?
it absolutely is. The group home that he lives in, he still is the jumping out of the car, running up to the door, and he kind of gives us a half-hearted wave as he leaves, you know. So, so he's
that is
happy.
that's wonderful. And you know, I did ask you to share your story in my book because it really was one that impacted me. Just hearing just how difficult. I mean, the putting, you know, water on a light bulb. I mean, that paragraph really gets me every time. But thank you so much for sharing it, and
Thank you.
just so happy he's doing well. And we'll see you at the end of the event.
Thank you, Tony.
So when you listen to Diane's story, I think you'll understand, you know, what I was feeling. Like failure really was not an option for these families. So let me go back to reading for you. And where I was at that point after hearing Diane's story back at Bancroft Day, even though failure was not an option, the days I was living, failure seemed like the only option. So by January 2005, I had been at Bancroft for a little over 4 months. In that time, I had hired new and experienced talent, and I put new processes in place to collect reliable information about what was owed us and what we owed. We were holding off our creditors for the time being. We even caught a thief who had been robbing us blind. It really was unbelievable. But there was so much to do, and I knew that things were going to get worse before they got better. I still couldn't see a clear way out. So I have to tell you a little bit about those first couple of days, or actually the first couple of weeks when I talk about the vendors. So a typical day was me answering the phone all day long, listening to vendors, plead for money, like please send us something. And they knew who we were and they knew what we did. So they didn't want to cut off service like the electric company and the telephone company and the water company, because they knew we needed it, but they also needed paid. And so they'd call me and say, just, you know, can we just have a little bit of money? And I would say, we're getting there, we're getting there. And the other thing I was dealing with was trying, you know, in those early months, I was still trying to figure out what was happening. Why weren't we collecting money? Why were we losing money? And really to get into that level of detail, you need data, right? You need your numbers to tell you what to do, or at least I do, finance people. We need numbers to tell us what was happening. And the data just wasn't good. And so in the early months, I was working with the vendors and I was working on trying to get data so I could figure out what the problem was. So over time, reporting had improved, but the data still was not good enough to give me a solid handle from which to project cash needs. Things were so bad and seemingly still out of control that I started tracking cash flow manually. Literally, I started an Excel spreadsheet, and every day I would get the money in and I would figure out who I could possibly pay that day, who was threatening to shut something off. I tracked cash day by day, week by week, so I could see firsthand when cash was coming in and when payments had to go out. Because I was tracking deposits daily, I knew Mondays and Fridays were usually the highest days of the week that we got cash. We would expect deposits of several $100,000 in the early part of a typical week, and then would have a dramatic midweek drop to the tens of thousands. We would then hope and pray we could recover by Friday. The mail carrier's arrival was literally the most anticipated moment of the day. I wondered how long this could go on. It was exhausting. Week after week, we find ourselves hoping and praying. You'll see that theme a lot in this story. We did a lot of hoping and praying. The cash would come in. And when it didn't, to the extent we needed, and we'd be struggling enough to have funds to make payroll every 10 days, and then would start all over again, working on the next payroll. I considered it a miracle that we had made it this far on so little, but at the pace we were going, we wouldn't make it much longer. So I have to tell you, back then, payroll was really the hardest thing for me. And I'm gonna see if you can get this visual in your head that I had in my head every day back then. If we missed payroll, this is what would happen. All the staff in the group home would come to work on payday Friday and would say, we can't make payroll, you're not gonna get paid today. Now, can you just envision what the chaos that would ensue there, right? Staff would leave, staff would say, well, I mean, I wanna stay, but I need to get paid. I need to pay my rent, I need to pay my bills. And they would leave. And I just had this ongoing vision of the individuals we serve in these group homes by themselves. It was really, really so stressful. And at times, as you can imagine, I thought, should I just give up? You know, is it time to give up? And I didn't give up, but the situation just kept getting worse. And by this point, you know, I really felt we needed a miracle. We really, really did. But I really wasn't convinced there was much more. And, you know, in Accounting 101, they teach you that you can't put a cash budget together on hope and prayer. But honestly, that's where we were, hoping and praying. So let's see what happens after all my hoping and praying. At the September board meeting, the CEO, and I'll tell you, we had board meetings like once a week. That poor board back then, they were exhausted. The September board meeting, the CEO and I once again painted a daunting picture of Bancroft's financial situation. Our financials looked better, but we still couldn't stabilize cash. Our cash projection indicated that we would not show a positive cash balance anytime in the upcoming quarter. And although we were making progress with collections, it was not nearly enough to keep up with our expenses. We were still in catch-up mode with many of our vendors, and our lines of credit were maxed out. Our banks wouldn't loan us any more money. So again, people really did want to help us, and I think that we got, you know, we were allowed a lot of delays, but it got to a point where people just needed paid, and I understood it. We needed a miracle, and then a miracle happened, and that miracle's name was Ray Welsh. He was our board chair, and there was a day where I walked up to the CEO's office to, again, share more bad news, and there was Ray sitting with the CEO. They had said they had done some serious thinking, and they wanted me to know that they were both grateful for all that I had accomplished, and they strongly believed that with a little more time, things would in fact turn around. And that is true. One of the main lessons I learned in this turnaround is it takes time, and you need cash to allow you time, and we didn't have any. In fact, Ray Welsh and his wife believed so strongly in the turnaround strategy that they decided to offer Bancroft an interest-free loan of $2.7 million, which didn't need to be paid back until we were able to do so. This wasn't the first time Ray and Joanne had supported Bancroft. They made a $3 million donation in 2004 when they realized the organization was in desperate need of help. Even though their son was no longer with Bancroft, they believed in the work being done, and they knew that those we serve and their family relied on us for their own survival. So I can tell you that, you know, there were so many great things about this interest-free loan. Like, number one, it gave me time. it gave me time to at least not worry about payday for at least a month. So I could really get back and focus on figuring out really where the problems were so that I can begin the turnaround plan. Just to have a break from worrying about, this week's payroll gave me time, and I really needed that time. The other thing that I really learned about their generous donation was I just can't stress how important it is for nonprofits to have donations. Whether you donate $1 or $1 million, it truly helps. We really would not be here today had they not stepped up and made a generation. And that's a really scary thought, that we needed a donation that bad, but we did. And again, donations are just so critical to all nonprofits. The Welshes provided a lifeline that we needed to buy us time. They were our miracle. But unfortunately, it was only short-lived. I only breathed for a short amount of time. I'm sure I got some work done in the turnaround, but pretty soon it was payday again, and we didn't have the cash. And the setbacks continued. It's cash, the phones were still ringing, and then our CEO stepped down suddenly. And that was really tough for me. It was a tough blow. He was my partner. He was someone to help me think through the challenges that just kept coming. And it was another pair of hands. I'll work on this, you work on that. There was so much going on, and he had to step down. I was so distraught. And again, it was one of those, are we just done? Can we really get through this? I was upset, and of course, I'm very concerned, and so was the board. They were very involved with me at this point, again, meeting almost weekly. And after much discussion, it was a really, really hard decision for them to make, but they finally decided that we should pursue a merger. And again, it was a really big decision because nobody wanted to go that route. But the reality is the other route was closing. And we thought, well, if we at least merge, we can do a soft landing. We can have somebody continue to pay our staff. We can have somebody that will continue to be able to serve the individuals we serve. And that really became the priority, no longer being independent, but really making sure that the individuals we serve, their care would continue. So let's go back to the story. This was the first time in Bancroft's history that the possibility of merging with another organization had been presented. It was a shock to the system to vote on the demise of the organization. If we can't turn things around, I said, merging is the only option that would keep our doors open and continue services without pause. The board had more discussions around the merger. In all, our leadership team met with 5 different prospective partner organizations while still rebuilding our financial position. We believed we were on track to merge with one of them by July of 2006. And I remember this part as well. They appointed me Chief Operating Officer so that I could lead the merger efforts rather than go out and recruit a new CEO, which made total sense. And I really continued the work in the organization because we wanted to make sure we were a strong enough organization that somebody would actually want to merge with us. It was really an interesting process. I got to meet with 5 other organizations, and I have to say that there were so many of them that were very excited that we might be joining them. They were great help along the way. They, were if we did miss payroll, they were going to send staff. They were really partnering with us, and I can say that I'm still very much in contact with those 5 CEOs, and they still check on us every once in a while. But it was a really, really difficult time, and but I have to say, in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, if I can just get to this merger, then maybe I don't have to worry about cash as much anymore. So we're moving along, and then a funny thing happened. In January and February of 2006, our financial indicators began to trend in a positive territory for the first time in 2 years. The first and most welcome indicator was that we had cash on hand. Cash, something I had never really had in this organization and in the 18 months that I had been here. And so we had cash, and slowly but surely, some of the other positive indicators continued, which might make me think, okay, should we still go through with this merger? But it was things like the phone didn't ring every day with the vendors telling me they were going to discontinue our service because we were paying them now on a regular basis. I was no longer waiting with bated breath for the mailman to come to see if there would be checks in the mail. I actually didn't even know when he came and went. And payday. I mean, of course, even today, I check cash for payday. There's some things that will never stop. But, you know, it was something I didn't have to spend my entire time to do. And so I could finally focus my attention on really understanding some of the things that we had to do for an organization to help stabilize. So all that work that we had done over the past 18 months, and it took a long time to actually take hold, but it finally did. And slowly but surely, all the positive indicators became more sustainable. And keeping Bancroft as an independent entity was now a real option. So when I got to that point, as you can imagine, I was very nervous about making that decision. A whole bunch of what ifs kept going on in my mind. What if we ran out of cash again? What if I had to reach out to these people who I turned down for merging and ask for their help again? What if? Were we really solid enough? Could we really go for this on our own and make it viable? What if another crisis hit? I remember sitting down with my team then and asking them if they were up for it. And, you know, because this wasn't just me that had to work hard to make this independent route viable. It was going to be hard for the whole team. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I didn't get this far without them, and I knew I wouldn't be able to move forward without them. I mean, my whole focus, as you can probably tell, was on the finances and payroll and cash and fixing things. But that whole team, they kept care going. Right, they kept make sure we had hiring staff and making sure we had staff on the schedule and making sure we were admitting people and making sure that our quality of care was as strong as it always was. And that, to me, was just as important as making sure we had cash. So I needed everybody. And, you know, we went around the table and asked them all to really be sure, because it was going to be hard work. But each and every one of them stepped up and said, we can do this alone. I want to be a part of the team that does it. So with that, we made a recommendation to the board that we wanted to remain independent, and it was unanimously approved. And that is the point where they named me CEO. So that was June of 2006. So you might think, well, that was an interesting story. I guess it's over. But I think everybody on this call knows that no, it was not over. We actually had an exciting future to plan. So back to the book. Once Bancroft had been pulled back from the brink of disaster, and we were positioned to operate more efficiently due to controls now in place, we began to enjoy positive operating results year after year and deliver margins to contribute to the organization's overall sustainability. In March of 2007, we made the very last payment to Ray and Joanne Welsh on their generous interest-free loan, that critical lifesaver of cash that brought us time during the turnaround. I have to say that was one of my proudest moments, I think, in my career here. I mean, they really took a chance in lending us the money and that I would be able to lead the turnaround, and to be able to pay them back and say, you know, we needed it then and now we're self-sufficient and can do this on our own. It was really a proud moment and really a big step. So once things settled down a little bit, I remember rebooting. I remember thinking it's time to reboot a project that had been on hold for many, many years. Actually, when I arrived, there was actually work being done and talk about planning for a new school, and we'll sell our campus and we'll build a new school. And I thought, what are they talking about? We're not even making payroll. But fast forward now, we're making payroll. It was time to really look at those plans again. We were seeing positive results in all the indicators, and I felt it was really time to modernize Bancroft's front door. And I always looked at this school from a business model perspective as our front door. because almost 75% of the individuals in our adult programs actually came through our school. So it was our front door. And if we didn't open it wide and we didn't make it state of the art, then we were going to lose some business, right? We were not going to be able to serve the individuals that we had. And we had heard that a lot of people said, you know, we wish we could come and get your services because we've heard they're the best, but we don't want our child in this facility. And I have to say, I mean, I'm a mother myself. I'm not sure I would want my kids in those facilities. So there was multi reasons that we had to do this. It was right for the individuals we served. It was right for the family members who were going to trust Bancroft with their child. And it was right for the business model, because if people stopped coming here, we would have been right back where we were at the start of this story. And I can tell you, I wasn't going back there. So it was really time to work to make our vision a reality. I sensed without improved facilities, our business model would be negatively impacted over time. Families considering Bancroft for their child were duly impressed with our teachers and curriculum, but they often selected another school due to the conditions of our facilities. And I always marveled at the incredible work our staff members were able to accomplish with our students in those antiquated buildings. And I could only imagine the possibilities of what they could achieve if the environment designed and built, especially for those, specifically for our children. So was it a risky decision? Absolutely. But I knew that without it, doing nothing was really not an option either. We'd be right back where we were. So the campus project would become the most expansive and expensive in Bancroft's history. Its planning and development became, in the end, an epic 10-year odyssey, complete with political intrigue, changes in funding and service models, rotating executive, and fighting factions. So the financing of the campus was in itself a whole other story. And we're either going to save that for another webinar, or better yet, you can read about it in the book. But really, a lot of issues, more stress, more cash problems. It kind of all came back. But at this time, I saw it coming. I could get ahead of it. And when we signed that financing for the $75 million for our school, again, another really, really exciting time in my career here. So here we are today. And as you'll see by a couple of pictures that are on your screen now, we did it. We did it. The beautiful modern campus named in honor of Ray and Joanne Welsh, and that's Joanne and her children there with me cutting the ribbon, is now serving a much more supportive and welcoming environment. I still love going to the Welsh campus every day and seeing the students and staff going about their day, just as we would imagined. It's colorful, it's fun. You see the music room, which is just amazing compared to what it was. And Bancroft now is an agile organization that's positioned to sustain itself for years to come. And I have to tell you, in every decision that we've made in this campus, and there were many decisions and many were hard, every one was made with the thought in mind, is we want this organization to be sustainable. We never want to go back and think we're going to have to merge or we're going to have to go bankrupt or any of those things again. I want this organization to never have to worry about those days again and just always be moving forward and to be striving for the best for the people we serve, for our staff, and for our family. Now, I often think about Margaret, and I think, I'm sure she would be proud of where we are today, no doubt. But I have to admit, when we were leaving the Legacy Haddonfield campus, I wondered, because that was the land, that was the place she found herself. You know, we've been there that long. I mean, Margaret Bancroft walked those low-earth floors just like we did. And I wondered, is she okay that I'm selling this and moving on? And coincidentally, around the time of groundbreaking for the Welsh campus, we discovered a clause in Margaret's will, and I'm going to read to you. It said, "It is my," this was in her will, It is my desire that the school, which has been developed from humble beginnings, shall continue after my decease and grow in importance and usefulness and become a model of excellence to that end. It is my desire that the Bancroft School and its system of training shall be extended and the school enlarged and perfected by the erection of new and properly equipped buildings, the employment of skilled physicians, instructors, and teachers, so that as many as may receive the benefits of its instruction. So it was like that's exactly what she wanted. She sent a message from heaven saying, yes, you did exactly what I needed you to do. Construct a new one. She knew that we were out going to grow that over time and that the population today would need a whole new environment. So that makes me happy. It makes me proud to know that she would be happy too about where we are. So that's my story. That's the story of Too Important to Fail. And I really thank everybody for tuning in. And I do think we have a few minutes for some questions. Now you see on your screen the book and a little barcode. And if you hold your phone up to that, right, Tim, you get the Amazon link. If you haven't got the book yet, you can do it right there. And if you stop in my office, I'll be happy to sign it for you. So let's see if we've got some questions.
First question is, were you aware of Bancroft's financial troubles when you were being recruited? And if so, why did you make the decision to come anyway?
It's a great question. And, you know, as I shared in the beginning of the story, you know, I thought I did know. You know, the CEO at the time was very honest and open with me. He didn't, you know, sugarcoat anything. He showed me the financials and said, here's where we are. And so I did know, but, you know, again, what I learned is the financial statements only tell part of the story. And really, until you get into the organization and really understand the day-to-day, do you really get to really feel what's going on in the organization. And I encourage all of you, if you're ever, you know, volunteering or donating or working for an organization, it's important for you to really know what type of financial condition that they are in, because otherwise they'll be going through the same craziness that we did. And, you know, to your question of would I would have come anyway, I think I would have. I was really ready to leave Penn. And, you know, I kind of came with, you know what, if it doesn't work, well, you know, I can just find the next job. And I think it was just the right time and the right place for me when I arrived.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next question. Can you explain what the phrase no margin, no mission means?
I absolutely can. It's one of my favorite phrases. And, you know, I use it because I remember that, you know, when I first came, and actually a lot of people, I think, just, you know, in the community at large, they think because we're not for profit, that means we're not supposed to make money, right? So nonprofit just means it's our tax ID number. It's, you know, we have a different tax status. It has nothing to do with whether or not we need to make money or not. And so, you know, I remember when I came, people were like, Toni, are we allowed to make money? It's like, I just left Penn and they're printing money over there. So I think we're allowed to make money. But more importantly, what I tried to help people understand is, of course we have to make money. I mean, we have to make payroll. We have to pay our bills. And in a nonprofit, the only way you get to invest in your organization is if you make money. So we invest in our organization, and that's our mission, right? So if you don't have a margin, you don't have a mission. And that profit that we make, or we try to make every year, is how we continually keep increasing the wages for our staff. It's how we invested in new facilities. It's how we get new technology. So making money is just as important as providing our mission. You can't have one without the other.
So the next question is, what were some of the things you did that helped the financials improve?
Another good question. So, you know, I talked a little bit about, it was hard for me to get data in the beginning because the systems weren't that strong. But once I could start seeing what programs were making money and which ones were losing, it allowed us to figure out the programs we did end up closing. So they were, interestingly, they were the ones out of state. So we had programs down in Louisiana that we ended up really divesting and selling back to somebody. We had programs in California, and those two we ended up selling back to somebody. And then in Maine, we had some programs. So the first thing we did was really bring the mission back to our Jersey program. This is where Margaret started. These were our core programs. And so we brought all, because we were using cash from our Jersey programs to fund out of state. So that was one really important thing we did. Another thing we did, I talked a lot about cash. And, I learned in those first maybe 6 months that, we would try new managers and we would try consultants and we would try all types of different things. And ultimately what I realized is billing became a very, very complex system over the years. And we really needed strong-minded billers, people who knew the different insurance companies, people that knew all the different ways to bill. And so we ended up outsourcing the entire business office, so billing and collection. Now that was a hard decision to make because the employees we had here were really hardworking and doing the best we can. But I worked a deal with the billing company that they would employ all the individuals that worked here. So at least everybody could keep their job. But outsourcing was clearly, and it took them about a year before cash started coming in. And these were people that really knew how to do it. So without a doubt, that was I think one of my most important decisions. And then, really closing some programs. We actually had a physician program in one of our sites that we ended up, having to close, and he moved on and had his own business. So I'm happy that everybody that we actually had to close or end our relationship, we're able to move on and continue to provide their service. They're hard decisions, but they were really right for the organization then.
Great. Moving on to the next question. What was it about our mission that captured your heart and desire to make an impact?
So, I shared a little bit of this in the early part of the story. I really was amazed when I came to this organization. I had really never, really seen anything like it. The mission was just a part of our everyday. You saw these individuals, I interacted with families, like it was just a part of it. And I was really wowed by that. But, I have to say, and I go back to that Bancroft Days story, the families were really the part that pulled my heartstrings the most. I mean, to really, I'm a mom, so I could just imagine what Diane and other people were really going through. And, that was the part that made me say, you know what, I got to figure this out because a lot of moms need Bancroft to be here.
The final question is, has Bancroft built an endowment?
Great question, because, man, we needed that endowment when I started 16 years ago. I can say that we have a stronger endowment today than we did then, for sure, but it's not nearly where it needs to be. I mean, there's a lot of organizations like Bancroft that as old as we are and have, really millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in their endowment. Bancroft does not. But that is truly one thing that every organization should really strive to do because it allows you sustainability. So we're doing better, we're a lot stronger, and it will continue to be one of our priorities moving forward. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions after this, certainly feel free to email me. I'll be happy to get back to you. And again, if you haven't gotten the book yet, you can do it right there on the barcode. And Diane, any parting words, Diane?
Just thank you and thank Bancroft for all they did for our family. I still love them, even though we're at another organization. And, I am still friends with many of the staff that Timmy had.
That's that family feeling that I'm telling you, it's just a part. Well, give Timmy hugs for us and big kisses. We're so glad.
And thank you for allowing me to participate.
Well, thanks, everybody.